We've been a partner with NHTSA for over 10 years. We have a great working relationship with NHTSA, and it's because of their concern for officer safety and safety on the roadway that we have the resources to do what we do, to put all this information out and to hold these webinars.
You're listening to Precinct 444, a podcast network from the National Law Enforcement Museum. Today we're bringing you an episode from Lifeline, offering a holistic wellness approach focused on supporting American law enforcement, promoting resilience, safety, and survivability.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first quarter webinar for 2025. My name is Nick Brule. I'm a senior program manager here at the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. Generally, in these webinars, we're joined by our partners from NHTSA. Unfortunately, NHTSA will not be able to join us today. So you will be hearing from myself with, if you're familiar with these webinars, the usual details that I cover, which is telling you a little bit about what's happening at the memorial. We're coming into May, which is National Police Week. I'll then take us through the details and the statistics of where we are in 2025 with fatal vehicle crashes, as well as trying and look at some of these injury crashes. And then I'll take you through some other things that we are starting to pay attention to in the field. Talk to you a little bit about a couple of things that may be coming up in the future that I think you might be interested in. And then we're going to hear from Dale Stockton. Dale Stockton is the architect of Below 100. It's a very important training program, safety program that we want to work closely with. Hopefully in the future, we'll be able to do even more of that. So we will hear from Dale Stockton right after my presentation. As always, Anna will be in the wings to take any questions that you type into the chat. And between Dale and myself, we will go back and forth and do our best to answer those questions. We're in mid-April here in Washington, D.C. We will be adding the names from 2024, as well as historic names, onto the National Memorial Wall. This happens almost every mid-April. This year, we are adding 345 names to the wall. 148 of those names are from 2024. And it's interesting because I am also the president of my former agency, the Metropolitan Police Department, and we have a new memorial wall that we just had built not far from this memorial. So if I can take a selfish moment, I would encourage you, if you could, when you're here during Police Week, if you're coming, to walk across Indiana Avenue right behind the courthouse here next to the museum and look at our memorial. And unfortunately, we are adding a name to our memorial wall from the Metropolitan Police Department's 163-year history. So that's kind of what's happening, and that takes us into Police Week. So Police Week is a big deal around here. You know, it's kind of the big show for the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. Here is a listing of some of the items and things that are occurring over that week, which really begins on Sunday, May 11th. If you're not familiar with what we do, May 13th is kind of the big day. We have a candlelight vigil. That vigil is on the National Mall. That vigil is usually attended by leaders in the law enforcement community from not only the federal government, but local agencies, as well as other large departments and small departments. And a varying number of people will get up to read those 345 names that we are dedicating and adding to the National Memorial. May 15th is, and I think it's down at the bottom there, is the national, it may not be there now, it looks like we're only at the 14th on this snippet I've got, but May 15th is when there is the National Police Week Memorial, which is hosted by the FOP, which is on the west lawn of the Capitol and is generally attended by the president. And again, they also honor our fallen officers in a ceremony there. This is just a quick shot that I've used. You've seen it before, but it's a great photo of what it looks like with those folks all facing the stage as names are being read. And we, from one candle at the front of the audience, share the light that spreads out throughout the entire audience. It's, as you've heard me say before, can be a very sobering and somber experience. During that time, the museum will be open. We currently have an exhibit, and I think it'll still be here in May, of artists who are police officers. So there are some sculptures, but largely paintings and drawings and etchings done by current and former police officers. Some of the art is spectacular, and it's not all necessarily law enforcement related. Some of it is, but not all of it. Some of it is just their artistic talent and skills being showcased. And of course, the National Law Enforcement Museum has a number of displays. You're looking at an image of some items from 9/11 and other things related to some terrorist operations that law enforcement took place. This is part of our time capsule. So before I start, behind me, this is our room of remembrance, our hall of remembrance. These are the panels or cells, if you will, that have the image and the end of watch date for every law enforcement officer whose name was added to our wall last May. These will all be taken down in the next week or so and replaced with new images. And if we don't have a photograph, we will use a patch from that organization to represent that organization. If we, particularly with these very old cases, you know, when we find a case of a town marshal from 1880, we may not have an image of that individual, but we will put something up instead of that to make sure that they're memorialized in the Hall of Remembrance. So let's just a few reminders about what it is we do here, apart from put names on the wall and tell America's story through our museum. I'm a member of the Officer Safety and Wellness team, and we have three primary programs that we run. One is Safe Leo, which is suicide awareness for law enforcement officers. I don't know if any of you track some of these things, but there's been some stories, particularly recently out of Harris County, Texas. I believe at least three of their deputies out there took their own lives, all in very short order. And we've seen this in other departments. And if you have an issue in your agency or want to get this training to help prevent suicides and get great information about avoiding some of the pitfalls that can lead to this phenomena, safeleo.org is a great program, and they'll do it for free, right? It's run through the Bureau of Justice Assistance. They will come out and send instructors. They start at the top, and then they'll train your first line supervisors, and then they'll train your line officers, and then they will come and train officers to be trainers so that agency can spread this training out to the entire field. Destination Zero, been around since 2014. We are still looking for submissions. It's the National Officer Safety and Wellness Awards. In particular, we like to see traffic safety awards. The last few years, our nominations for traffic safeties have been good but scarce. And we want to make sure we get a good variety of folks out there showcasing what they're doing to keep officers safe. But if you have a wellness program, a fitness program, a tactical program, if you have a whole bunch of things going on that support safety and wellness that would be very comprehensive, that's one of the categories. So we'd like to hear from you. Again, you can go to our website, nleomf.org, click on the Officer Safety and Wellness tab. That'll take you to Destination Zero and tell you how to nominate your program. Last but not least is why we're here. NHTSA, we've been a partner with NHTSA for over 10 years. We have a great working relationship with NHTSA, and it's because of their concern for officer safety and safety on the roadway that we have the resources to do what we do, to put all this information out and to hold these webinars. Most recently, we were in Long Beach at Lifesavers. Most of you should be familiar with Lifesavers. I know a number of you are LELs. We met a number of law enforcement liaisons out there at Long Beach. We made some great interactions, talked to a lot of great folks about different stuff, and got to hear about what they're experiencing out there in the field. This is a picture of myself. Dale Stockton, who you're going to hear from, is on my right in that photograph. And then to my left, if you don't recognize Gordon Graham, well, I can't help you. That's Gordon Graham, who is I would call him a guru in risk management, and he has been preaching officer traffic safety, among other things, for years, and he is a dynamic speaker, and he is an expert in the field of risk management. So the three of us presented on a topic that we've been talking about for 2 years now, which is the use of tire deflation devices. And we had a very robust audience with a lot of questions and some good interactions in that Lifesavers workshop. And so we hope to do more things like that in the future. And you're going to hear from me a little bit more about TDDs in the future of this presentation. So just a reminder of how we ended last year. And if you recall, when we did I think it was in January, I did our fourth quarter, which is our closeout of that calendar year. You see that the number 46 has an asterisk next to it. That number was 48. And what happens, which I've explained before, cases that we follow through the news media and gather information on that appear to be legitimate line of duty deaths that are traffic related somehow, sometime, for some reason, sometimes they don't make it to our desk to be considered for presentation to the National Memorial. So if that doesn't happen, we don't count it, right? It's not an official line of duty death if the case doesn't even get presented to us for consideration. There could be a number of reasons behind that, and I won't go into all those details, but very often it ends up that the officer was not on duty, or we find out that there's something else that was occurring within that case that would not meet our criteria. So, but the asterisks, I'll remind you, were for two cases that were unusual, but for my counting in NHTSA resources or for NHTSA data, involved traffic. One was an older case from Chicago. An officer was in a crash in 1987, and his ultimate cause of death, while tied to the crash, was carried as a different primary reason. I explained this in the last webinar, but I counted it because it was the result of a crash. We need to capture that. And similarly, a deputy, actually his primary reason for death was drowning, but the fact was I'll call it a crash, crashed his car into a river while transporting an arrestee. Very unfortunate circumstance, very sad, but again, for me, it involves a vehicle. And some people might say, well, that's not a crash, he hit the water. Well, for me, that's a crash, and he unfortunately drowned while trying to get out of the car. So that's why there's the asterisk next to it. Let's look at where we are now. And I updated this yesterday. The numbers, I mean, it's very early in the year. We're just passed through March. But we're down 40% overall. We're down by 9%, a very slim margin there for firearms related. But traffic related, again, I've learned not to get too excited because, 2023 was a great year. And then 2024, our numbers shot back up. And I'm looking for a continued downward trend because that means to me, what we're all trying to do, what I'm trying to do, what Dale is trying to do is working. The message is out, people are acting on it, and we're saving lives. To me, that's the major metric by whether or not we're succeeding is, are we reducing crashes? Are we reducing fatalities? Are we reducing injuries? And so traffic related is down, as are other causes. And just a reminder, other causes is the gamut that runs in law enforcement line of duty deaths from being stabbed, assaulted, electrocuted, 9/11 related illnesses, which are still coming in, those kind of things. So back in 2024, if you recall my fourth quarter webinar, I told you that the analysis of 2024 seatbelt use had not been completed. Well, we finally, once those two cases didn't come in and I finished my analysis of all the cases that were submitted, that's the percentage of officers who died in 2024 who were not wearing their seatbelt. It's one of the highest percentages we've ever seen. 52 is the highest I had seen when I first started doing this. I don't know what we've got to do or how we're going to do it, but we have got to get officers to wear their seatbelts. And I'm one for drastic measures. We've heard about peer support. We've heard about punitive action. We've heard all these kinds of things, but we have to convince our officers that they are safer with it on. The tactical reasons that are given are just not sufficient. Learn to get out of that belt quickly. Arrange that material on your external vest, which is more than I had to deal with, I know, but even so, get seatbelt extenders. Don't allow your peers to put that seatbelt behind them so they don't hear the annoying dinging. Make sure they're wearing their seatbelts. To that end, one of our partners, Stephanie Fowler, who's with CDC NIOSH, and I think you've heard from her before, is doing a study, a seatbelt study. If you have a second and a pen and paper and are a sworn officer or want to share this with sworn officers, She is doing a study and wants to interview officers about why they do or don't wear their seatbelt. She's trying to get to the bottom and create data to have a true study so we can better understand this problem with officers not wanting to belt up. So it's mstefani@mix.wvu.edu. Take a picture of it, ask me for it. If you didn't get it, send me an email. I'm going to give you my email at the end of this, and I'll get you connected with Melanie. It's completely anonymous. She just wants to talk to actual officers to hear their side of why they don't do it. So let's look at 2025 and what's been happening in terms of fatalities in law enforcement related to traffic. There have been 2 fatal automobile crashes. There have been 3 struck-by crashes, and struck-bys are one of the things we do focus on. Not that we're ignoring automobile crashes, we're not, but struck-bys are something that there are lots of actionable things that can be done out there on the road to help protect yourself. No single vehicle crashes, which is good because that's one of the things we always harp on, because very often that has to do with speed and loss of control by an officer, typically in a response, but sometimes just during normal driving. And then 2 moto crashes, and we also monitor and talk about and analyze motorcycle crashes. So the 2 fatal automobile crashes both involved pursuits. And one of them, and this is not an image from that's an older image. There was an image I had of that crash that occurred in California, but that image still had the officer's body in the street with a flag draped over it. And the reason that happened is because his cruiser struck a pole, split in half, and he was ejected out of the fractured car, which split around the pole. Very violent collision, very sad. And the other crash also involved an officer responding to a pursuit that was involved in a collision. So 2020 struck-by crashes. You have one who was struck on the scene of a crash, and then one that involved a tire deflation device. We want to talk more about the tire deflation devices. Again, I think I have an image. Yeah, I got this off the... This came out, and it's still up there. Every once in a while, folks are posting videos of great stop sticks, good hit, as you see here, it's titled. This is a weird image to look at. If you can see my mouse, those are the headlights of the suspect vehicle. This black mark here is the officer's arm, and this long thing is the set of stop sticks, spike strips, TDD, whatever you want to call it, that he is running out. This is the edge of the roadway. You can see the yellow line running out to stop. And he's out trying to stop a wrong way driver, which we absolutely have to do. I get it. And I have no problem with using a stop stick to do that. But this is what we don't want officers to do. This is precisely what we want to stop. Officers quickly deploying these stop sticks and doing so by running out in front of the cars. And if you've heard me say it before, I'm going to say it again. Watch the stop stick training video. There is a tether on that so that you can drag that long thing across the road from a safe distance, behind cover, not your car, and spike the tires of that vehicle and rip it out of the roadway so the people behind it, your pursuing officers, don't also get their tires spiked. And I want agencies to get away from this celebratory close call stuff about these stop sticks, because you're just a second away from it being a tragedy, not a victory. I had this slide up before. I'll update it with 2024. Actually, I think that is 2024 there. We went from a low of 10 in 2023 up to 17 in 2024. I'm hoping we don't match that same record again this year. I hope we continue to see a decline, but that's why we preach about struck-by crashes and some of the things that we can do to avoid these kinds of things. So one of the things we are doing with NHTSA is we're working on an initiative to create a map that will highlight officers who were struck and killed as a result of a violation of slow down and move over. If you all know Todd Lease and the Cumberland Valley Volunteer Fire Association, respondersafety.com, those folks there is an interactive map for struck-bys across the country. I had a meeting with Todd yesterday, and I'm going to be reviewing what he has up there, and we'll be creating a map these are going to be specific to what we've determined to be a violation of that state's specified slow down and move over law. They're not all the same. We've talked about that. But we'll be going back to 2012 to try and work on that map so folks can see just what's happening out there. By the way, speaking of slow down and move over, I've seen lately a lot of initiatives. There's one going on right now in my county in Maryland, on a route in Maryland. They're doing enforcement. I'm seeing an uptick in talking to other people, going to conferences, in a desire to increase enforcement of that law and to do even more to raise awareness. Here's responder safeties. National numbers as of March 27th. 5 responders, roadway workers, have been struck and killed throughout the United States. 3 of the law enforcement officers, I mentioned them already. 1 towing and recovering person and 1 DOT worker have been struck and killed so far this year on the nation's roadways. Just a reminder, responder safety has a struck by reporting function on there for you or anyone in your agency to record a near miss, record an injury crash, and to record just a property damage crash that is a secondary crash out there that you've had that has become a struck by crash for vehicles on the side of the road. So our motor crashes, we've had 2 motorcycle officers. One was on patrol and was involved in a collision, and the other was returning from a detail. I believe that was in Puerto Rico. And a reminder again, we do territorial officers. We have Guam, Puerto Rico, and other territories that we also count. And we also do correctional officers. But I believe that collision, that officer in Puerto Rico was returning from a detail and was involved in a fatal crash. NHTSA Region 6 is actually it's tied right now with Region 9. Our numbers are relatively low. We have 7, but Region 6, unfortunately, again, is Region 6 and now Region 9, California, Arizona, and are both tied with 2. But as the year goes on, unfortunately, it seems like Region 6 seems to push out there every year. And again, I'll always say those are very large, very populous territories. So you've heard me mention this, and it's still continuing. And I mentioned the Tremco switch last time. We're still getting several reports of police vehicles being stolen. And it doesn't mean it wasn't happening in the past, but it certainly means we can gather the data a little more easily now. And the Tremco company publishes on their website reports of vehicles being stolen. One recent example in Florida, a deputy got out to simply check on a woman for a call. And as he got out to go talk to her, she just circled around him, jumped in the car, and took off. And we have seen stolen police vehicles be used to make traffic stops, to carjack other people. And the critical issue with this is that it's going to always lead to a pursuit. We cannot let that police vehicle be stolen by a civilian. There's weapons in there, there's equipment in there, there's radios in there, to say nothing of the fact that they can go out and wreak havoc with the public in a marked police car. So for the injury report, I've pulled out, there's been 5 injuries. This is from the Michigan State Police, this image here, and it was a struck by on the roadway, and it was a violation of slow down, move over. The numbers for officers struck and injured using tire deflation devices, there have been 5 so far this year who were not killed, but as I've talked and mentioned, these are very violent collisions and often come with, in many cases, career-ending injuries, and in other cases, very difficult injuries to recover from. And of course, sometimes involves law enforcement officers hitting other law enforcement officers while they're deploying those devices. So we really have to get a handle on this, and we can reduce these injuries. As we are right now, in terms of news reports that I've gone through that recorded injuries, I'm at just over 100 that I find through my sources. And my sources are getting better. My search techniques and that kind of thing are getting a little bit better because I'm finding more cases, but I also think we've got a problem with more cases coming up. And if you recall last time, and I know I keep hearkening back to last time, I apologize, but there was a number of crashes of officers on the roadside engaged in either felony stops or arrests or blocking traffic for a crash where a distracted driver or an impaired driver came flying up into that scene and injured officers and totaled cars. So injuries, loss of vehicles, all this has to be taken into our calculus of how bad it is out there. These have not changed for quite a while. There is one thing I want to talk about that I'm going to add, I think, the next time. You know, seatbelts, you've heard me talk about it. You might hear Dale mention complacency, fatigue. That's huge, managing fatigue. And I think that's one of the reasons we do have some of these crashes while guys are responding to an admin assignment or doing something or coming and going. Tire deflation devices I've talked about. Training needs to be enhanced. We need to train with our vehicles and our evac procedures and policies as much as we do our firearms, right side approaches, body armor. Being seen, and being seen includes conspicuously marking your patrol cars so that people can see them from the rear with reflective striping, more reflective striping than says police or sheriff. There's got to be something more. But the other thing I want to mention is alcohol use. There have been a number of stories recently, now one out of Maryland and then another one from my agency of officers impaired in their marked cruisers, their marked take-homes. I mentioned the story from Florida before about the officer who is on duty in full uniform in a marked car, arrested by another jurisdiction, just smashed. And we cannot ignore alcohol abuse in the profession of law enforcement. It's been around for a long time, and you'll hear me harp on it. And it's not that I'm a teetotaler. I'm not. But I think, you know, we all recognize when our peers need help, and we need to make sure we're getting them the help they need. And of course, when we come across an impaired officer, I guess I'm pleased that officers are doing the right thing, right? We're not sweeping it under the rug. They're being charged with DUI, which they should be. So some good news. As I mentioned, I talked with Todd Lease, and he introduced me to these folks at an organization called Penn Start. And this is a mock-up. It's on their website. They are creating what I think they would like to have be a national traffic safety training center and an experimental center, and a center where we can recreate things to not only train law enforcement, but other public safety officials as well as DOT folks, and look at how things occur on the roadway. And I think it's the design of, if you can see all of these different areas that have not been created yet that are going to deal with all kinds of different conditions out there, that will open up the opportunity for training, for testing. It'll be a place where people can come from all over the country to see what is happening with training and roadway vehicle safety. So we're hoping to do more with Penn Start. I'm looking forward to going up there and looking at this facility. A lot of these portions are still under construction. And I hope that the Memorial Fund will partner with Penn Start in one way or another, if nothing more than to just simply share the news about this fantastic training facility that is just, if I remember correctly, southwest of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So certainly for the East Coast, it'll be easy to get to, but I hope it'll become a draw for training and conversations nationally about what's happening in traffic safety. So 2024, we're looking at another forum. We did a summit in 2022, and then the Eastern Transportation Safety Coalition did a follow-on summit in 2023. We're looking to do not 2024 forum, 2025 forum. We're looking to do a forum in 2025 again, and this will be a solutions and recommendations based forum. So we all know what the problems are. We want to get an audience of executives, chiefs, sheriffs, so we can tell them where they think they should be and what we think they should be doing to try and get their officers to be safer on the roadway. Okay, this is me, as always, N. Brule at nleomf.org. Our website is www.nleomf.org. And if you go to nleomf.org, at the top right navigation bar, you will see Officer Safety and Wellness. Click on that tab, and it'll open up all of the resources we have for DZ, Safe Leo, and NHTSA. And I would like to introduce Dale Stockton. As I mentioned, he is the architect of Below 100, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about this important safety training program. Many of you have heard it, but it is definitely a resource that LELs and other people across the country, you can even have your guys refreshed on this. Much of it applies to traffic safety, although not all of it. We're, again, as I mentioned, hoping for a better working relationship, or stronger working relationship, I would say, with Below 100. So I'll let you take it over, Dale.
All right. Thank you very much, Nick. I appreciate that. Let me start sharing my screen here. I so like what you're doing, the updates, so much of it overlaps with our message. And I want to start this off today by thanking the LEL specifically. I had the opportunity to present with Nick and Gordon Graham at the Lifesavers Conference. Nick showed you that great picture. It was great being there and partnering with him in front of great group. I think we had about 140 in the audience. It was one of the best attended sessions, but there were a lot of LELs there. I got to speak with many of them, and so appreciate what you're doing. And I actually intended to make this challenge, ask this of you at the end, but it's in my head now, and I've learned the hard way that sometimes if Dale doesn't do it now, it doesn't happen. And that is to encourage you, please, when you're out there in the field. I know many of you have programs that are somewhat scripted, and you're there to accomplish that, whether it's child safety seats or setting up planning for a DUI checkpoint. But use that opportunity when you're with those agencies to ask them a couple of basic things like, hey, do you know what your seatbelt wear level is here? And they're likely to say no. But share what Nick just shared with you, that we're seeing an uptick in this. There's no reason our officers shouldn't be wearing seatbelts now. And then he mentioned TDDs. We're going to hit briefly on that today. But this is another area where we're losing people, and a lot more people are being very seriously injured. And a lot of it comes down to two things: awareness of just how incredibly dangerous this is, and a lack of training. And you guys can help bring that awareness. So there's my challenge to you and my ask of you, and appreciate all that you're doing. Now, Nick mentioned that many of you are familiar with Below 100, and I know that because of the interactions we've had. I expect there's some people in the audience that maybe never heard of it, or if they've heard of it, they're like, I kind of know what it is. So I'm going to kick this off showing what we refer to in Below 100 as the trailer video. It's a little over 4 minutes long, and it gives you a very quick down in the trenches, if you will, all the aspects of Below 100.
1199, shots fired. I've been shot twice. Suspect vehicle, the blue Yukon. That's one of the fully automatic, because you're shooting pistol, like a MAC-10 style pistol.
My husband was going code 3, lost control of his car, hit a median. He rode the median down pretty much like a skateboard and hit a light pole, and he succumbed to his injuries. The reason for my husband's death was because he did not have his seatbelt on.
This is literally life or death. Whether an officer makes it home to the family or is sent to a funeral home. The goal of Below 100 really is to drive down line of duty deaths to fewer than 100, a level we've not seen since 1943.
I mentioned the video is a little dated. I said Below 100, we've not been there since 1943. Actually, it's now well over 100 years. And as you know, if you've been listening to the National Memorial for a while, we find additional line of duty deaths over the years. And so you have to go way back, more than 100 years to find a number below 100. So let's just talk about that number for a minute before we hit on 2025 and what's happening. there's a reason that we say below 100. And I have great respect for destination zero because ultimately that would be perfect. But the reality of police work is it's a very dangerous profession. And if there's a guy out there that wants to ambush you and he's willing to die trying, um, it's just a tough environment for our people today. But what we know when you look at our losses objectively, there are so many that are clearly preventable. When we have 56% of our folks that are lost in vehicle crashes not wearing seat belts, that's something we have control over. Our people have control over that. Our policy impacts that. Our police leaders can influence it. That's one area that we definitely, as Nick said, we need to really drill down on. So the reason we say below 100 is we know that we can achieve this. And it's just a matter of addressing those preventables. All right. So where are we in 2025? These pictures are our last 4 officers that were lost in this country. And not surprisingly, it's running pretty close to what the numbers have continued to show us over the last 20 years, vehicle related and gunfire related. Trade places over 20 years, it's about 8% higher for vehicle related, but it's pretty close to half and half. The officer on the left, the officer on the right, both gunfire losses, the 2 officers in the middle, vehicle related. And Nick mentioned TDDs today. The officer on the left, well, second from the left, Grant Candies, in Louisiana, is a tire deflation device loss. And I'm going to mention this again later, but I'll tell you now, we've lost 49 people, 49 officers, good people in this country in tire deflation device related incidents. And there's hundreds, if not thousands more suffered career-ending injuries because of that deployment. We can do better here. And it really comes down to training and awareness. The officer to second from the right, Hector Cuevas. Many of you saw the photo. I'm going to show you an image here in just a minute of his vehicle. It is stunning. It is stunning what happened to that car, and speaks to just how impacting speed is in these incidents. This is an overhead shot of the crash scene from Deputy Cuevas's crash, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for him, for his family. He was married, 2 kids. The first officer on scene. I mean, think about the impact on the agency. It just goes so far. And that upper left quadrant there, where his vehicle is, it just speaks to just how high the speed was in this incident. It's hard for me not to get choked up when you look at this. And in that moment, think about this, folks. He didn't go to work that day thinking he would never make it home. And yet he didn't. His wife and his kids didn't get to see him walk through that door again. This is an incident where, had he made different choices, it's very likely that he would have made it home. I can tell you that this is not confirmed, but I can say it with 99% conviction based on the sources that I've talked to. Although the news accounts of this said that he was in a pursuit, he was actually trying to engage in the pursuit. And further, he was not running with his emergency equipment. I'll move on. So what is the below 100 mission? Reduce line of duty deaths to fewer than 100 per year. And I told you already where that number comes from. But how do we do this? How do we approach it? The whole idea is we address areas that are most under an officer's control. We can't control the actions of the bad guy, but we can dramatically reduce our officer line of duty deaths by addressing areas that we control, seatbelt speed, and more. Let's look at just our 5 tenets. There's the 5 tenets below 100. Simple, straightforward. I'm so proud of the fact they literally fit on the back of a business card. Wear your belt, wear your vest, watch your speed. Those 3 are pretty objective. You either do them or you don't. The last two, when, what's important now, essentially situational awareness. And remember, complacency kills, something we've heard since the day we first got into law enforcement. It truly does. So when you look at those 5 tenets, some people have said to me, that's so simple. Yeah, it is. It's simple to understand, but it's not easy. It's tough to change police culture. Most cops really don't like two things. One is change, and the other is the way things are. So we're caught in this kind of tension, if you will, and it's difficult for a 24/7 do what the last shift did and the following shift will do it and repeat, right? We tend to perpetuate our weaknesses, our problems. And just like, here's an example. It's simple to understand the concept of losing weight. Take in less calories, burn more calories. But how easy is it to do? Well, it's not easy. We know it's not easy, and it's not easy to change police culture. Okay, let's change gears a little bit here. Since this is a vehicle-related webinar, I want to drill down on the traffic-related deaths of officers. And you probably already saw from the 5 tenets, I like to keep things really simple and present them in a way that people can remember. It's three S's: speed, seatbelts, struck by vehicles. That's what the bulk of our losses. In fact, it's hard to think of a situation in a vehicle related where it's not one of these three if the officer had any culpability in it at all. What is it about our culture, though? And I think one of the greatest quotes I've ever heard is the one you see on the screen right now. There is too much tolerance for negligent driving in our profession. For the longest time, I would hear police leaders say, we just crash a certain number of cars. That's what cops do. No, that's not what cops do. It's not what they should be doing. I've had police leaders literally reach out and say, we have crashed almost our entire fleet. Can you help us? Well, yes, below 100 can help, but part of that, leaders have a role in this. They certainly have a role in this. All right, so let's take it right at the top. Seatbelts. We know they work. We know they work, but only if you wear them. This crash is out of the DC area, and this is Adrian Morris's vehicle. Many of you have seen this before. It's from a few years back, but I show this one because in the video of this, you can see the rotator bar. The lights are still rotating. That's a plastic light bar. You can see the passenger compartment is intact. This was a survivable crash, and yet he died because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and he got thrown out of the car. He should have made it home that night. He should have made it home. This next slide, this is actually, I think, one of our most powerful slides in our presentation, because 2 of these cars involve line of duty deaths, and 2 of these cars did not. Now, sometimes if I have enough time, we'll play the can you guess game, and it's not a game, it's serious, it's deadly serious. But you met Susan Moody in the video that I just showed you. She lost her husband, Brad. Brad's car is the one shown in the top left. You can see that the passenger compartment, he should have survived that crash. But as Susan said, the reason he died was he was not wearing his seatbelt. The lower left, that's one actually, Nick had a different angle on this car. That's Adam Rosenthal's vehicle from Delray Beach. Now, you might look at that and say, there's no way, Dale, nobody could have survived that crash. The seatbelt didn't make any difference. Well, I tell you what, look at that one and look at the 2 on the right. He survived that crash, and he made it back to full duty. And the lower right one, I can't tell you the agency because they ask us not to share, but I have talked to the officer who was driving that car, and he did make it back to full duty also. Both Mike Mitchell and the officer in that lower right vehicle attributed their ability to come back to 2 things: seatbelt and body armor. All right, let's move to TDDs, tire deflation devices. And, we spent an entire almost 90 minutes on that subject at Lifesavers. I'll hit on it quickly here. We've lost 49 officers in this country in TDD-related incidents. We don't have to do this, folks. it can be changed. If you're not already making sure that your people are trained or helping make sure they're trained, please revisit that. I was involved in a group that helped Police One conduct a survey, about 600 responses, and roughly half of the agencies responded that the only training they did was the initial training and never since. Think about that. This is one of the single most deadly things we can do. It's very low frequency, it's extremely high risk, and the variables in this are what kill people. There are so many variables that are not in the officer's control. We can do better in this area. All right, move to another tenet, body armor. And what I'm trying to do here is give you a very quick snapshot of where we are in below 100. And it's, this is a 4-hour program. So I'm giving you literally about 20 minutes of certain pieces of it. Body armor works, but once again, only if you wear it. And I like to show this group of photos. It's out of Charleston, the Charleston church shooter. And I'm sorry if I'm picking on an agency, but they put themselves out there. The only person wearing body armor in any of these photos is the bad guy. And the officers put the armor on him. Why did they do that? Because they thought somebody might try to shoot him. They're literally standing in front of him and they're not wearing body armor. We can do better than this. All right, let's move to win. What's important now? And in keeping with this being a kind of a vehicle-centric presentation in the area of struck by, this is a situation. You get out on the roadways at night, visibility is incredibly important, incredibly important. I took this photo. I did not set it up. I was literally driving through the scene. I had my camera sitting on the seat next to me, and it was really slow speed. I kind of liked it. I'm a photographer. I thought at the time, man, this is working. The reflective gear is showing the guy's wearing his reflective raincoat, and it was a good scene. They had people slowed down. But as I worked my way through, I found out, guess what? There's another officer in this wearing the same raincoat, but he hadn't turned it reflective side out. Think about that. What's important now? To the guy on the right, it was being seen. He knew how potentially dangerous this is. To the guy on the left, I think its win concept stopped at, I don't want to get wet. Win is ongoing. It's got to be part of everything we do. And to that point, when we present win, we look at it both from a professional side and a personal side. And I won't go through each of these. You can see them for yourself. But it really does fit in so many of the things we do. And I'll give you one example. When you're on a traffic stop, do you take a phone call? Do you check your email? Or is your attention focused on that stop and your environment and the oncoming traffic? The phone can wait. The texting can wait. And on the personal side, so many areas of our life, I have had so many people tell me after they got exposed to WIN, saying, man, I've shared this with my kids. It's not just at work type stuff. It helps. And it's an easy concept. The more you do it, it's like muscle memory. Just becomes natural. All right, let's move to complacency. This word insidious, it's one of my favorite words because it reminds me of a snake. And that's just what complacency does. It sneaks in. And even things that you do every day, when you become complacent, they become much more dangerous. Think about that motor officer walking up on that truck that stopped there in the photo you're looking at. Many motor officers conduct dozens of traffic stops in a day. And we know from motor officers like to generally stay motor officers. In many agencies, they can do an entire career. Think of the thousands of times they've done that. How easy it is to become complacent. In addition, when we do things over and over again, we become overconfident. And if nothing bad has happened before, we tend to assume that nothing bad will happen again. Complacency. We show these slides in below 100, and the one on the left, at first glance, it's like you can tell he's wearing body armor, he's reasonably fit, he's headed into work, his duty belt looks squared away. But when we ask people, what do you see? One of the first things they say is he's carrying his gear bag in his gun hand. Well, he'd tell you, well, hey, I'm standing in front of the building I'm going to work in. Well, hello, I think most of us have heard about shootings at police stations. It does happen. His head's down. He's probably thinking about the last thing he said to his spouse or vice versa, on and on. And then the guy on the right, you can't make this stuff up. Seriously, you're going to be checking your smartphone while you're operating a motor? Enough said. So how do you fix this? How do you guys address this? And even if you don't say below 100, I'm fine with that. The tenets, though, are powerful. And the key to making change is figuring out where your greatest risks are. So I'd ask all of you today, as you listen to this and you go about your day, think about if you had to predict where the next serious injury in your agency or the agencies that you work with is most likely to come from, or line of duty death is most likely to come from, where would it be? Now, for many of you, I know because I've done this a few hundred times, you're already thinking of a specific person or specific situation. And if you've got that thought in your mind right now, the obvious question is, what have you done about it? Have you had that courageous conversation? Have you taken any action whatsoever? So many times after we've lost somebody, you hear often a command level person, I knew that was going to happen. Somebody should have talked to him. Well, you know what? Nobody named somebody works in your agency. If it's predictable, if you can sit there and think in terms of where it's most likely to happen, it is preventable. All right. So let's close this out with a kind of and I'm trying to be not in the sense of bragging about the program, but just sharing transparently with you. Cops built below 100. Cops deliver it. They're all volunteers. It's simple. 5 tenets, like I said, fit on the back of a business card. And it's applicable at all levels. It is a mistake for anybody to assume that below 100 only applies to line level folks, because that's just not true. And by the way, just flashing back to TDDs for a minute, if you look, and I can show you the 49 slides, there's every rank you can imagine, every type of agency that you can imagine that have lost people in the deployment of tire deflation devices. So don't assume below 100 is just for line level or just for uniform. Our trainers are volunteers. The core below 100 course is 4 hours. When we do a train the trainer, we bolt on a trainer add-on the same day. And we can't train somebody to be an instructor in 4 hours, but if they're already experienced as an instructor, we can empower them with the program. And the materials are provided to them at little or no cost. Again, it's 501c3, and our people are volunteers. So that's it, Nick. Thank you so much for this time. I so appreciate what the memorial does, and I look forward to the partnership ongoing. If anybody has any questions, be happy to answer them. And then the website is there. You can see upcoming training. We're kind of experiencing a significant uptick in requests, and the momentum we have right now, that's a good thing. And if you want to host a below 100 training in your area, there's information on that on the website also.
All right, that's great, Dale. Thank you so much. And as always, you speak quite eloquently and straightforward about what the issues are. And, I always appreciate it when we shine the light of day on some of these things and don't necessarily tiptoe around some of the harsh realities. You mentioned, the guy checking his phone on the motor. And, as I review things in the news, and there's so many videos out there that you can learn from, and you can really see what good things are happening out there as well as some bad habits. I've seen a number of these videos with the good time radio is on in the car when the body camera is on and while they're talking on the microphone. And I'm always like, don't you want to turn the damn music off? Like, what are you doing? You shouldn't even have that music on to say nothing of the fact that you're pulling up to a DV scene and I can hear, whatever country music or whatever playing in the background. It's just, so again, remembering what's important now. One other thing, again, thank you, Dale. And I hope everyone sees the value of below 100 and how impactful it can be. One of the other things is I was at a traffic meeting down in DC, and it was really about enforcement. But one of the things that they had, and I think most of the agencies here would be interested in it, and I'll get the name of the company, but they did a brief presentation on distracted driver technology that they're deploying now, so that, and maybe many of you have seen this, it's 2 cameras up on a pole along the side of the road with troopers who are downstream, and this camera will simply take pictures of drivers as they're going by. And of course, it's got AI that's conducting analytics. And if you're sitting here in your car, the camera is high up because it's looking down into the car, and they can see this, right? Or if they see this, and I know they were testing it in Alabama, but of course, they're seeing all kinds of other things in the car that are worthy of a traffic stop, to say nothing of firearms and some other unusual activity that some drivers are engaging in. I'll leave it at that. That cause the downstream troopers to pull them over. They, in their cruiser, get a picture of the image with the license plate, because there's also a camera facing in the front and back to capture that vehicle's information, and then it sends an alert when it detects the violation to the trooper, who's downstream enough to look at it and determine whether or not this is worthy of a traffic stop. And they make that determination. But it's something that I think DC is looking at. The presentation was for DC. And one of the things that I am encouraged by, at least locally here, and I think it's happening nationally, is we're getting back to conducting traffic enforcement. There was a severe fall off following 2020, the pandemic, and the defund the police, and the George Floyd moments and all that. There was a retraction of enforcement, and I think we're now going back to more enforcement. So there are lots of tools out there to help us make the roads safer. Anna, nothing? Okay. I want to thank everybody for your time. And again, I always want to thank Dale Stockton for his presentation. And I want to, of course, always thank our partners at NHTSA. And as always, if you have something that you know is out there that you think you want to share with the group, and I think maybe next time I'll look into this technology that we're talking about, because it can be used for slow down and move over, I think this, and I talked to the guy who was presenting, I think there's a lot of possibilities with this new technology to not remove the cop from the enforcement, not have like a photo radar ticket, but to really give great evidence and have that traffic stop occur with that evidence. So I think that's the wave of the future. All right, folks, we've taken up enough of your time, I think. So thank you all very much for joining us. And as always, send me an email if you have any questions or concerns or comments. Take care.